Okay. What's up, everyone? We should be live. So, um, first off, welcome. I'm gonna give it a couple minutes in case people are running late or something like that. So, some people might join in at 8:02, fashionably late. So, I'll wait a minute because I can see the stream count here. My studio is very red, by the way, if you couldn't notice. LED lights off of Amazon, $10, best purchase of my life. All right, cool. So we'll get into this. So welcome everyone to the live stream. This is my studio right behind me, and I'm gonna show you a little bit around it first, so you see what hardware I'm actually using before we jump into producing and getting into the software. So, so let me switch to my live camera or my mobile camera here, rather. Hold on one second. So we're gonna go into screen share. Where are you, screen share? All right. Desktop. Whoa, infinite. Okay, here we go. So we're gonna walk around real quick. So you get to see what I use, because basically my studio is split up into two sections, a live section and a mixing section. So hold on, let me get this camera so it's not glitching on you guys. Holy buffer. Okay, there we go. So let's move you over here. So this is my live section. This is where I practice all my stuff, all my mixing and everything. So basically what I'm running over here is a TC Helicon Voice Live Touch in the corner with a couple of condenser microphones. I have a Sterling Audio ST51 and an AKG A40 over there. Then I have down here my bad boys, CDJs. They're the 900 Nexuses and the 2000 Nexus, because if I was going to actually spend the money to get these things, I had to go all out and really get the Nexus system, because it's just where it's at. So if you're thinking about doing Pioneers to play out at the clubs or whatever, because they're the standard, got to go with the Nexuses. Especially for me, the 2000, because you can get so creative with the center console here. It's fantastic. So, and then I got the APC 40 Mark II. Above that, got to have a keytar. Why wouldn't you have a keytar? And then when I bring it back over here, we are now back into the studio session. So studio section, I mean, sorry. So I got the KRK Rockets, the 8-inch subs. And then over here, a couple of old MIDI controllers I don't really use anymore. Korg Gasolator and LPD18. And then every producer needs to have this in their studio. Apogee Duet audio interface and an external hard drive. Those are two absolutely essential things. If you don't have those in your studio right now, you better have them in them like soon, because the Apogee Duet is seriously the best, well, I would argue one of the best audio interfaces you could possibly have in your studio. It's amazing, this thing. The sound quality is insane. It's the best. And over here I have I think the camera's glitching out, but you probably got a glimpse of it. Behringer BCF 2000. It's just a rotary MIDI controller for doing some mixing in my DAW. So, all right, let's get out of this camera. Let's get back to the regular camera before it glitches out on me anymore. Jeez. All right, I'm back. So, anyways, that's the live stuff behind me. So we're not really going to go into that stuff. I could say that for another time. Yeah, so the live section is all there. Now we're back in the studio. So basically what I'm going to do with you guys is I'm going to open a few of my track project files. I'm going to show you how everything's going down. So I have, let's see, the first project file we're going to go through is Apart, the song I just released on iTunes back in December. Then we're gonna go through a future song of mine that's coming out in actually later this month, which I'm gonna announce right here. It's gonna be a Beatport exclusive. It's called Soiree. So that'll be out in February 24th on Beatport exclusively for 2 weeks. So definitely check that out. It's my first Beatport release. So we're gonna go through that song, dissect it. So we have two different vibes: a progressive house and electro house, my two styles. And then lastly, I'm gonna just take you into a quick little overview of how I do mastering, because mastering is that thing where it's like that. It's like a black art, and some people want to try it. Can make or break your track. It really can. So we're gonna go into that too. So let's start. I'm gonna go into screen share now. So I'm gonna get out of this picture so you guys don't have to see me. And we're gonna go into Ableton, because Ableton is the software of choice for me. So let's open up a part. Where? Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot I had it named Brooke and Ryan because we're the singers on it. Okay, good. Yeah, it's still showing up. All right, cool. So I gotta let this open because it's a really big project file. Most of my projects run anywhere from 30 to 55 tracks, which actually, compared to a lot of pros out there, doesn't seem to be like a lot. Because when I see a lot of really professional DJs out there, they're rocking like 70 level tracks. Like they have 70 unique audio or MIDI tracks running within one project, which is absolutely insane. And I have a couple of projects like that, but most of mine tend to run between 40 to 30, 30 to 40, somewhere in there. So here's a part. This is it in all its glory. Like I said, this is what, a 36 track mix down. So we're gonna go into this and just take a look. We're gonna go step by step from the beginning. So let's take a listen to the intro first, because how I break down all my songs is intro, verse 1, some sort of build up or bridge into the drop or chorus, whatever you want to call it, a lead out, bridge or verse 2, and then right into the next drop, and then an outro or something like that. So I tend to usually have like a formula with my songs. But you got to get creative sometimes too, though. So let's take a listen to the intro of a part real quick, and we're going to dissect it. All right. Yeah. So there's the intro. So basically, let's take a look at it. So let's zoom in here. So I know producers out there. Let's see. We've already got someone asking the dot or the VSTs I'm rocking. Yeah, I had a feeling that would be a question. So let's take a look here. So basically, if I go through these, so let's start on, say, this guitar sound I have right here. So this guitar isn't a sample. It's not a VST plugin per se. It just came stock with Ableton. I just messed around with it. Really, all that guitar is just Ableton stock pluck guitar, and a nice amount of reverb and ping pong delay on it. And I tend to use a brick wall compressor, contrary to most mix engineers out there, because I like to have all my things kind of leveled out evenly. So that's really it for that sound. I have a whole bunch of standard reverb drops, impacts that I use in like almost every single track of mine. So like that sound, I've seriously used that sound in like I think every track I've ever made. So Now we'll get into the fun stuff, the VSTs. So here's one of the first VSTs I use. It's Alchemy. If you've never heard of Alchemy, this is one heck of a synthesizer. It's free. Actually, one of my friends told me about it. I hadn't known about it. I've just been using it for the past year, and you can add on to it. You can buy it essentially, but this is the free one, and what you get with it is absolutely insane. The pads in this are some of the best atmosphere pads out of any synthesizer out there, unless you want to spend $500 on like Omnisphere or something like that. It's insane. So you definitely, if you're looking for good pad sounds, use Alchemy, because you're going to get really crazy stuff like this, like I have here. I don't know if you'd be able to hear this. Yeah, very cool. It's called a glass pad. I love it. And same thing underneath it. I have another pad under that. So 2-layered pad. So the intro is basically 2-layered pads, a little bit of white noise reverb, and then some filtered bass sounds that I have in the piano. And the piano I use in a lot of my tracks is Ableton's stock piano, and also a great free plugin for producers out there, Piano One. It's an awesome piano plugin. I'm sure if you've ever looked up piano plugins, you've found this, or you've come across this, because this is one of the best ones out there. If you mess around with it enough by adding enough plugins on it, it really can get a very natural sounding piano. So, okay, cool. Let's kind of move into the first thing here. So, if you, oh, by the way, quick thing, if you haven't noticed, I organize my tracks. You can see here. So here, follow my mouse here. So I always put my vocals at the top, followed by all my drum/percussion sounds. And then I have all my effects, so like white noises, sub drops, risers, and then everything that has to do with synths or otherwise goes on the bottom. And that's honestly really, really key to making a good track, is having organization and color coding and labeling, because especially when you're getting up there and with bigger tracks, it can get really, really messy. So, okay, let's take a look at this. So let's go into the first verse now. So let's take a listen.
Girl, I miss you. Couldn't find my way. Couldn't get through to you. Said don't wait, please don't wait. But oh how I need you now. 'Cause it kills me to see us apart. To see us apart.
All right. That's another awesome question. The vocals, yeah. For all the vocals on my track, like I was showing you in that live section of my studio, I use the AKG and ST51 Sterling Audio microphones for my vocals. I have no vocal booth really of any sort. I use a just a regular plain like padded foam box basically that sits around my microphones just to do a little bit of soundproofing, and then I use a X noise plugin to get rid of any other background noise on the vocals. So why don't we solo out the vocals and we'll start there. So here's my vocals. I'll open up the plugin chain at the bottom there. Here is what's going on here.
Girl, I missed you. Couldn't find.
So on my vocals in particular, I always cut out below 150 hertz on my voice, because I like to cut out the bass of my voice, because I feel like it just makes it really, really messy. Sorry, in this case it was 90 hertz, not 150 hertz.
I need you now, 'cause it kills me.
And then the two plugins that really, really, really make a difference, if you're doing vocals, take some money and invest it in these two plugins, CLA Effects and CLA Vocals Stereo. These two plugins are godsends for vocals. Like, You just slap these on and stock, they already your voice gets like 10 times clearer. It's just unbelievable what these plugins do. They're by Waves. So they're a little bit on the pricier side, but if you have the money or you can somehow find a way to get these two plugins, uh, this is the way to go for voice. I have them on Brooke's voice as well here. So if we still out her voice.
Boy, I missed you. Couldn't find my way.
So now the thing with vocals is when you're doing vocals in a mix, you're gonna want to generally keep them mono, but as you start putting on delay and stuff, it kind of makes a stereo effect with them. So like my voice is coming in completely through the center.
I missed you.
But if you have headphones on or something like that, you're gonna hear that it sounds like it's stereo because there's a lot of reverb and stuff that's going on the sides. So that makes a difference. But then occasionally, like on Brooke's voice, so we could blend together. You want to do some sort of stereo panning because that can really fill out the song. If you put the vocals out to left and right, it can really start to fill out the song and make for a really cool listen. So like with her voice, if you listen again,
Boy, I missed you.
you can clearly hear that her voice is really panned out. And that way, when you put the two together like this,
Girl, I missed you. Couldn't find my way.
I come through the center, she comes out on the sides, and it balances out the mix. So if we were both coming through the center, we would layer over each other and it wouldn't sound very good.
Please don't wait.
So a little bit of panning lesson there and a little bit of what I use for vocals. So that's pretty much what I use. For female vocals, I'd recommend going a little bit higher on low cuts. Like on the EQ, I think, what do I have her EQ'd at? Yeah, okay, so I mixed it up. Hers was, I low cut her at 150 hertz because most women's voices are not bassy enough that you're going to hear anything below that. And it cleans up the mix. And with my voice, usually with a male voice, like 80, unless they're like a super like baritone type of guy with an awesome sub bass, then you'd want to keep that. But otherwise, I do some low cuts on voice because it really helps clean up the mix and take away low also takes away low frequency of a recording. So like if you had background noise, you didn't know about it, there you go. It'll take away it. All right, so let's take a look. So let's go into the lead synths and the basses, and then we'll go into the drop and we'll get out of this song. So here we go. This is the first lead synth I have to come into the mix. It's this sound right here. So if you're a newer producer, this is what's called automation, and I'm sure a lot of you know what that is out there. But if you're new, this is automation. So basically, what I'm doing here, and this is a lot of electronic music in general, is automation. If your track's not sounding very good or it sounds very plain, it's most likely because you're not automating a lot of stuff. To really make the magic happen, you have to work with automation. And I mean, I'll show you here. I have so much stuff automated, like everywhere. Every track, almost every individual track has something happening. So what I mean is that like with this synth, for instance, I have it low pass, it's filtered, and the filter opens up, as you can see here. The filter opens up and it allows the full sound to come through. So low pass, high pass filtering, those are just two of the things that you want to do when you're making a track. It's they're very important to do a lot of automation techniques. So and that can be applied to anything. So like I have a whole bunch of stuff in some of my synthesizers that will be automated, not just filters. So which brings me to my next point. Going back to the VSTs, Sylenth is like the best synthesizer ever. If you don't have Sylenth 1, you need to get it. Like somehow get this synthesizer. This is the first synthesizer I ever got, and it is the best synthesizer I will ever have. This is incredible, this thing. It's a powerhouse. Um, for super saws especially, like if you're in the progressive or electro house genre, like you got it. You have to go with Sylenth. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. So I'll show you the five synths, the five lead synths of this song were all made, I'm pretty sure. Let me check just before I catch myself. Yep. All five of them were made on Sylenth, these lead synths. So let's go through each. I'm going to just solo out each one here and really quickly. And you'll see, I'll put them all together and they'll make one massive layer of synths. And that's a big part of if your song isn't sounding big enough, it's because you're not layering enough. And sometimes less is more, but if you mix it just right, so like I'll show you as I go through these tracks, look at the EQs down here. All my EQs, they kind of fit in like puzzle pieces because that's really important. If you do nothing else on each track, make sure you EQ because cutting out the low ends like I do on most of these synths because there's no need to have the bass in them. They're not bass synths. They're mostly mid or high synths, meaning that they're higher octave. And so cut out the low frequencies and then make them all work together. So see this one? See how I have it boosted at 5,000 hertz? And you go back to this one, it's boosted at 700 hertz. And I believe the other one's cut at 500 hertz. So they kind of interlock like puzzle pieces, and it really, really, really helps you to manage your mix and keep the sounds really, really clean and tight. So, all right, let's see. Oh, we got some more questions, but let me go through this first. So here we go. Let's go through each synth. These are 5 layers here. Layer 2. Layer 3. Isn't that funny? That one sounds disgusting, and yet it's so important. Layer 4. Last but not least, layer 5. Yeah, so those are the 5 main driving synths of this song. So if you put all those synths together, it's going to make one massive, massive synth. So let me free up my hands here and put them all together, solo them all. Layering. It's all layering. And it really makes for that big sound. So if you're like in the progressive house genre, like I am pretty much, you need to really focus on layering because it'll just really, really build up the track. And the same thing goes for the bass section. So yeah, that was the leads. Now we're going to go into the bass because that was the next. Someone else wanted to go right to the bass. So let's see. Same thing. I think I have what, 1, 2, 3. The piano is more bassy, so I put that with the bass. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 basses. This is a little more than normal in my tracks, but let's solo them all out. Second bass. Third bass. The piano, which is more towards the bass end, which is why I have it down here. And then I have two sub basses, so I'll put these two together. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about with bass is that sub bass, those last two I just did, sub bass is absolutely crucial in dance music, and it's also something that can really make your mix messy. So going back to my VSTs, for bass, I almost solely use massive because it has such a hardcore analog sound to it that nothing beats it for bass design. And I'm sure anyone out there will tell you that, especially people in like dubstep or drum and bass. It's crazy, this thing, when it comes to bass. So, yeah. So, like I was saying, with the sub bass, I have two sub basses in this, and they're both. If you look at the EQ, it's pretty bizarre. It's like a tiny little lump, like literally, like just a hill. And same thing with the other sub bass. It's like half of a hill. Yeah. So, those two together create the low, really, really low frequencies in your track. So that way, when you go to the clubs or something and you're playing these, your track doesn't sound completely weenie and weak, because the sub bass is all usually 80 hertz or lower on the EQ chart. So that's what I do, is I will literally just filter, like do a notch at 80 hertz, like, because that's almost always where the sub bass is falling, 80 hertz and below. So like on my lower sub here, I filtered it from 80 hertz down, and it's so perfect having it like this, because it keeps all the other nonsense in the top region out of there, and it can let the other basses breathe. Because that's, if you're having problems with your mix, I am telling you right now, it's because your low end, something's messed up in your low end. If your mix sounds muddy, messy, it's because of your low end. You have too many basses running, or there's just, the bass is coming in too hard. You have to, it's all in the EQ, really. So like some of the other basses, see how I, instead of boosting in the higher ends, you kind of drop them out. But of course, some basses you don't want to. Like this bass was a little more higher, if I believe. Yeah, like that one is a little bit more on the mid range, but it's still, so it's like a kind of like a top bass. It kind of adds to the layering. But yeah, again, basses, just like the lead synths, it's just all layering. It's gonna fill out your sound, and it's gonna really round out the track in general. So okay, let's see here. So let's move on to the drop real quick. All right, here we go. We're gonna take a listen to the drop real fast. Yeah. So one of the questions I knew was gonna come up here was with the kick drum. Yeah, that is the almighty in electronic music, is the kick drum. Yep, you guessed it. So let's just solo out my kick drum, I guess. So I try to change my kick in every song, even though that's really, really hard to do as a producer, because you only have, you have those, like, those clutch samples that are just like a couple, 3 or 4 kicks that are like, oh my god, I want to use this in every track because it's amazing. And that's what I tend to try to not to do that, just to keep my sound a little bit different. Like, this is a very, very unusual kick for me. It's a lot subbier than normal, I guess. Because, well, first of all, I have it boosted like crazy in the low end, which honestly, now that I look back on this in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have boosted it that much. It could probably could have been a little bit cleaner without that. So don't take that down. That's probably not the best. But what you can take down on drums is make sure your kick is mono. Well, get creative. Try it without sometimes, but for for the most part, 95% of the time, keep your kicks mono because it will let everything else in the mix breathe. Literally everything else but the kick will breathe because the kick is what drives home the entire track on your drop. And you need that to come literally straight in someone's face, right in the center of these speakers. So that way everything else can be panned out around it. And a lot of people forget to do that. And what happens a lot of times too is that when you're doing a mono or when you're building a track and you have a kick drum, if you don't realize that the sample is in stereo, a lot of times people don't realize that, and it ends up muddying their mix. Use something like this free plugin right here, or even in Ableton, you can just go to this right here in utility. If you use mono or Ableton, I mean this, you can do this in most any software. Because I used to use Logic. See it down here, Logic Pro. Um, anyways, you can go in here and pick mono or on any software. Just make sure you use some sort of utility plugin to make the kick mono if it's not already. But if you're not sure, just do it anyways because it will really, 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 really make a difference in a track. Like this is when I figured this out, I was like, oh my God, this is that. It was the huge, significant change in my mixing when I figured this out. It really, really, really lets your tracks breathe. So oh, look at this. That's even fun too. I forgot this plugin does this. A little bit of shading stuff. All right, I'm getting distracted. Let's get out of that. Anyways, so yeah, make your kicks mono. Clearly have a little bit of boost in the sub ends, but not too much because that's where it gets a little bit tricky. You got to balance it out with your sub bass down here. Don't forget the sub bass is still here. So got to balance those out too. So that's really where the next thing I want to talk about comes in. And that's another question someone asks is, what do I do for side chaining? And if you don't know what side chain compression is, real quick in one sentence, it's the kick. When the kick hits, the rest of the stuff ducks out. So it causes that pumping effect in your song. And basically what I use for that now, I didn't used to, but now I use a plugin called Kickstart. And it's actually, ironically, it's made by Nicky Romero. Well, made by, quote unquote, Nicky Romero. He helped design it with the Cable Guys, I believe, plugin team. And basically the way this plugin works is it's basically instant sidechain compression. It's one knob guaranteed like success. You just pop it on the track and dial up how much sidechain compression you want, which in this case I have a absolute shit ton of it on. And yeah, you just let the audio go through it. So I'll play like just this top synth. Sorry about that. Top synth. Here we go. So this is with Kickstart on. You can hear it's like ducking out, like you know, coming in and out. I'll turn it off. Now listen to it with it off. Makes a huge difference. And the way I used to use it, which I can show you real quick, is with a regular compressor. There's so many ways to do sidechain compression. In Logic, you used to do it with buses. So you'd go to like your sends and returns and you know, bus out the audio and have it duck. But in Ableton, the easiest way to do it, and I'm sure in most other software, the easiest way to do it is with a compressor. So let me grab, I have a preset here that I made for myself, sidechain. I would drop that in, and you would turn the sidechain feature on that Ableton has, which is really, really nice. And you'd just send it into your kick drum, because that's the audio you want the sound to go through. And basically adjust your threshold. I'm not going to go into too much detail with this because I have other videos on YouTube about it. So adjust your threshold, and that's how sidechain compression would work, at least in Ableton, similarly in other DAWs. So yeah. So Kickstart, I highly recommend it. That's another plugin I rock. So back to VSTs, I guess. Let's see. I think that just about does it for this track. I have a whole bunch of other things like snares are important, but I guess I'll cover that in the other track just a little bit because I'm going to go briefly through Soiree. And yeah. So effects, I pretty much just have a whole sample pack of effects that I've created over the years or found or bought, like this white noise. And then same thing with risers, like this guy. It's a bunch of stock little effects. So it's a blend of samples and MIDI that I use. Obviously, like most every producer uses out there. So yeah, that's basically a part because I won't go in the second half because it's just repetition. But yeah, that covers that song. So let's move out of this real quick, and we're gonna go really fast into my song that'll be on Beatport in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. No, 2.5 weeks, I think. So let me switch back to this camera so I can say hi. So that's basically a part. So you see how I do it. I kind of went over the the amount of tracks that I have, the sounds. So the key things really keep in mind in producing for sure, at least how I go about it. Lots of layering, lots of EQing. Keep your kicks in the center, and really just get creative with your songs. So here we go. Let's open back up a new track here. This is Soiree. And if you have been following me for a little while now, you may have heard this song in a couple of my mixes because I used it in a couple of my mixes. The one in October, Ronin Live in October. And if you tuned into the radio show that I was on in December, I also rocked it on that. So let's open this up. So this is a totally different feel, this track. This is a totally different feel. We just moved out of progressive house. Now we're in electro house because this is the other genre I love to make. So when I go up to the clubs, I actually have something to mess around with. Let's just play a little bit of this. We're going to skim through this real fast, but just so you guys can get an overview of it.
Yeah. For the DJ to do his thing. Yeah.
So yeah, that's Soiree. In a nutshell. The 30-second preview of it. Yeah, so the first thing you're going to notice on this, and that I already got a couple questions on, is why is this one big block? Why this looks very different from my last track? And there's one big reason why. It's to really EQ the kick and the snare, as this title says, kick and snare. So check it out. This kick is freaking huge in this song, and because it's so huge, I have to make everything else completely breathe around it. And same thing with the snares. These are really punchy snares. So let me solo out the snares first. That's like a little tiny like trap snare I have that I made. It's just a regular snare, but if I go into the envelope, it's just pitch down just like that. More automation for you new producers. See, check it out. automation. And then this is the secondary snare. This is actually 3 snares built on top of each other, and I actually call it Ronin Best Snare Loop because I use it in almost all my tracks. It's one of my favorite snare drums that I've ever created, and it sounds really, really great over any kick. So actually, you can download it too in one of my YouTube videos. Top 10 snare track that I just released, I don't know, what was it, back in December? So you can go check that out and go download this exact same snare. Yeah. So both are really, really, really punchy snares. And when you layer them over this monster kick, because this is literally a monster kick that I created here, if you look at the waveform, I mean, it hits really, really hard initially, and it just subs out in the end. So just solo out this kick. Yeah, it's really, really huge. So in a nutshell, to answer that question, the reason why I do this is because, let's click on it. All these are, this is every other sound other than the snare and kick in my track. So there's very similar to a part. 36 tracks, I think, 35, 36 tracks total in this one. So I group the rest of the remaining, 32 tracks into this kick and snare group, I call it. And I put one EQ over it. And I literally do it's called a cut EQ right at 50 hertz and 180 hertz. So what that means is that 50 hertz is usually the exact pinpoint location of where a kick comes in. And you can get it more, it depends on your kick sample too and how much, what you've done to it. It can vary anywhere from like 40 to 100 hertz. I mean, if you have a really high up kick, but generally speaking, almost always kicks are right. If you can cut out at 50 hertz, you'll be golden to let that sub out. And 180 hertz is like seriously the perfect magic number for snare drums. So I do this type of EQing on all these tracks here because it will really, really, really let the kick and snare come through, which are super important in electro house genres, to let them like punch out so you can stay on time and keep the beat going, especially in this track because the kick is so huge. It sounds awesome. So I really wanted to really show that, you know, kind of highlight it. Now the rest of these sounds in electro house, I have a lot more effects going than synths. So you notice at the drop compared to progressive house, like apart, there's significantly less synths. So I have just the 1 mega lead synth that I have here. Yeah, and you'll notice I have kickstart on it again because that's why it's ducking out. And I just layer it with the second synth, which I just did recently, actually. About a month ago, I finished this song, which is another thing I want to mention about producing, is that don't rush it. Take your time. You know, I had this song done, like actually what I thought was done a year ago. Like I finished this song back in February last year. And I've just been tinkering with it ever since. And it's like, people might be saying, well, that's crazy. How can you make a song a year ago and not release it? Well, you have to keep playing with it and make sure it's just perfect before you want to release it. And it's not that you just work on only one song for an entire year and not release anything. Of course, I'm not just doing that because I have tons of releases out. You have to work on multiple projects at multiple times, and just work. You know, it'll help you keep your sanity when you're producing too, because you can bounce between genres and change it up every once in a while because you get sick of working on the same song, and you need to let your ideas breathe and take some time off and come back and take some time off and come back. So, but yeah, I've had this song done for a year and it's finally just coming out 1 year later. So, keep that in mind. But like I was saying, with the secondary synth here, this is layered onto the first synth. Really grungy, as the title says. And then, of course, the couple other synths that start to come in, like the one in the beginning here. And an automated riser synth. throw those all together and it creates what is the drop. And the reason why I don't have as many synths is because in electro house, especially this song, the kick, again, I keep going back to this, is so big that you need to let it breathe, and too many synths is going to really overwhelm the mix. And usually in electro house, it seems to be more minimalistic. You kind of have one really, really gritty bass synths over your percussion and kick sounds. So keep that in mind if you're an electro house producer. Yeah, I don't need to go into super detail about all the other synths and stuff. It's mostly just samples and effects like that. But a couple things I will mention that are really that I like to use. Camel Crusher. I'm sure a lot of you know about this. If you don't, free software from Camel Audio. The plugin's fantastic. It really can vibe up a synth. So let me show you. I'll show you what I mean here. So where was it? Here it is. So if I turn off Camel Crusher, here's what it sounds like with it off. And I'm going to turn it on right now. So Camel Crusher has a lot of great presets on it that you can just go through. You can cycle through. It's a free plugin, and I use it on a lot of like bass synths because it'll really, really fill them up and make them pretty large sounding actually. But don't go too heavy on it because you'll start to get a lot of distortion and it can get pretty messy. Another plugin I'm going to look at here, this is worth noting, the OTT multi-compressor. I use it on a lot of lead synths, but again, this is another thing you don't want to go overkill with because it just pushes the audio to the extreme. I have a video on this too. Ableton has a built-in OTT compressor, which is basically just a multi-band compressor, meaning that it's regular compressor but EQing the sound at different compressing different EQ'd parts of the sound. And yeah, the OTT compressor is one heck of a free plugin. It's by XF, or you can go grab that too online. And you definitely don't want to use this in too much extreme, but it will push the audio and make it sound amazing. So like, I'll show you on the lead synth how big of a difference it makes. That's with it on. Here's with it off. Drastically changes the sound. But be careful with it because too much compression is not necessarily a good thing. But that's what I want to point out with that track. So those are all like my secret weapons essentially when it comes to making these tracks. And those are some really key points, going over it again, of the drums, keeping your drums really mixed out clean, and the rest of the synths, not going too hard with some compression distortion, but definitely want a little bit of it, especially in electro house. So yeah, that's the track. And again, this is going to be out on Beatport in a couple of weeks here, February 24th. So keep an eye out for it. It's called Soiree. So lastly, I just want to show you the plugins I use for mastering, because this is a question that I already got asked like 4 times, but I definitely want to hold it off to the last thing because this is like the most important thing in any genre of music is mastering. So I have a mastering template. So I bounce out my mix down. So this is the latest song I'm working on right here. And I bounce it out into one big waveform and I put it into a project file called mastering template. And I have a series of plugins that I use. So I'm just going to show you the exact plugins I use. First off, EQ. Any EQ will work. I don't care. People say they use Fab Filter or Pro EQ or something like that. They say like, oh, it changes the sound so much. And yeah, there's a little bit of difference, but honestly, any stock EQ is great because if you have good monitors and you can hear what's going on in your song, just stick with any old EQ. You'll be able to hear it just fine, what needs to be fixed and what doesn't need to be fixed. So oh, by the way, in case you don't know what mastering is, if you're new to producing, mastering is the final step of polishing your finished audio. So after you've done the whole mix down and everything, you would bounce out your song and send it into mastering. So just a little disclaimer there about mastering. I use a saturator after the EQ. And another thing to keep in mind is order really, really matters when you're mastering. Plugin order is huge. So definitely keep that in mind. So I have a saturator, and I just use that lightly to kind of fill out, warm up the track. And then we get into the big boy plugins. These 6 plugins right here are my go-to every time I do mastering by myself, which sometimes I still don't recommend. Sometimes I think it's good to get a second ear, second opinion in there on your tracks. I've sent my tracks out for mastering a couple times, and it really does make a difference. Some people really have, the hardware to rock better sounds and really hear different things that you can't hear after you've had listening fatigue or something like that with working on the track. So, but anyways, I'll just go through these 6 plugins. So, Max Bass, but this is by Waves. Absolutely essential for my songs. It helps to really boost up the low ends, particularly the very low end of the song, like the sub frequencies. So I'll put that on after my saturator. Then I'll go to my Apex Vintage Stereo Exciter, and this is really cool because this is based off a very old piece of hardware. And basically what the exciter's doing is it's cleaning up the entire high end, but you got to be careful with it because it really starts to make your sound a little too sharp and kind of hurts your ears. So keep that a little bit lower, but any exciter will do. I just happen to really like this exciter. So exciter is what I go to. Then an stereo expander, which is crucial in electronic music to let everything breathe and keep your low ends centered a little bit more. Then a multi-band compressor. This is Waves C6. It's my go-to. I love it. And then you have a regular compressor, the API 2500, which is a fantastic stereo compressor. And I actually just used the preset on it, Mastering 1, and it kills the track. I love it. It's so great. And last but not least, the L2, the all too famous L2 Ultra Maximizer. This thing is incredible for really getting your sound up in all its fullness. So those are the mastering plugins I use. Those are my secret weapons because a lot of you really wanted to know how I do that, how to get my songs so, sounding so perfect. But honestly, I don't think my songs are that perfect yet. I can still always learn things, and I still could use better equipment, better hardware to get the sounds up, and ultimately get my ears trained to hear better. But yeah, that's it. That's the mastering plugins I basically go to. I'll change it up every once in a while, but for the most part, on every track I've ever made in my life, I will stick with these plugins because they work. And like they say, stick with what works. So, which I guess I'll leave you guys on that point, because if you're a producer out there and all you have is a laptop and the stock software, that's what I started with when I made, say, my Cruella Alive remix, and it really doesn't matter what plugins you have if you have the best software out there. Just keep in mind it's really all your ear and your creativity. But of course, better software will help a little bit, but just keep that in mind. So I guess I'll leave you guys with this, what a fully mastered song sounds like. This is a song that I'm not even going to have released for, I have no idea when. And let me switch to the other screen because I'll wish you all farewell. So yeah, that's Studio Session Live. Very informative. I'm still hope it wasn't too dry, but if you're a producer out there, I hope you got some knowledge out of it. You get to see what I'm using, because that's what I've been using for the past 3 years, all that stuff, and it works. It works. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll leave you with the song that's in this mastering file I have here that I'm working on, because why not? It's the latest song I've been working on, so I'll play it for you guys right now. All right, I'll switch back to the screen. Hold on. All right. Here is a song. Let me turn this down so your ears don't explode. But this, I guess, is like a reward for sitting through all this. My God. Okay. Peace out, guys.
I'm going wrong. I'm going wrong.
Thanks for joining me, everyone. I hope you learned a thing or two, or at least got to see what I use, and maybe it inspired you or somehow. But I'm Ronin, signing out. Thanks for listening.